We weren't fighting loudly, no yelling, no slammed doors, and somehow, that made it worse. It always started the same way. Not with anger, at least not at first. Just a sentence, a look, a moment that felt small until it wasn't. If you've ever realized halfway through a conversation, we're having the same fight again, you know the feeling. You tell yourself to stay calm, to choose your words carefully, to do it differently this time, and still, the conversation slips into the same argument you've already had more times than you can count. I didn't understand why this fight kept coming back until the day we finally slowed the conversation down. At some point, I stopped reacting to the words themselves. I started reacting to the pattern, the way the conversation would circle back, the way certain phrases landed heavier than they should have, the way I could almost predict what was coming next before it even happened. I didn't always know what triggered it. Sometimes it was something small, a reminder, a question. Other times, it felt like nothing at all. We'd be talking about one thing, and suddenly the air shifted. Voices got quieter, words got sharper, and there it was again. That familiar tension settling in. What made it harder was how reasonable it all sounded. No one was yelling. No one was saying anything cruel. If someone else had overheard us, they might not have noticed anything wrong at all. But inside, everything felt tight. The conversations ended the same way every time. Not resolved, not exactly angry, just distant. That kind of distance doesn't announce itself. It shows up quietly, in shorter replies, in avoiding certain topics, in the hesitation before bringing something up. I started to notice how careful I'd become, weighing every word, replaying conversations before they even happened, telling myself I was just trying to keep the peace. But the peace never lasted. The same fight kept coming back. Sometimes days later, sometimes weeks later, always slightly different, always ending the same way. And every time it happened, the same question lingered. If we're both trying, why does this keep happening? I didn't know what else to do with that realization yet. I just knew we couldn't keep pretending it wasn't happening. Once you see a pattern, the instinct is to fix it. That's what we did. We tried to fix it. We talked about it afterward, when things were calm, when emotions weren't right at the surface. We said things like, next time, let's handle it differently. Let's not let it turn into that again. I really believed that if I explained myself better, everything would fall into place. So I tried to be clearer, more thoughtful, more careful. I slowed my words, softened my tone. I told myself, if I stay calm, this won't escalate. But staying calm didn't change the outcome. Sometimes it made it worse. We tried taking space, walking away when things felt tense. And for a little while, the silence felt like relief. But the issue never really left. It just waited. We tried explaining our intentions. That's not what I meant. That's not how I intended it. The more I explained, the less hurt I felt. I started paying attention to everything. My tone, my timing, my expressions. I became careful in a way I hadn't been before. There were moments I wondered if the problem was me. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I wasn't communicating clearly enough. Advice came from everywhere. Just listen more. Try to see it from their side. Pick your battles. I tried all of it. We tried harder, and somehow, that made it heavier. Each attempt carried a little hope, maybe this time would be different. And each time the fight came back, that hope faded just a little more. I stopped expecting resolution. I started expecting repetition. That exhaustion created a pause I hadn't felt before. If this feels familiar, stay with me. This is where things began to shift. The shift didn't happen during a fight. It happened in one of those long pauses, the kind where no one is speaking, but everything feels loud. We had both stopped talking, not because things were better, just because we'd run out of words that didn't make it worse. I noticed how still everything felt. The room, the air, even my own thoughts slowed down. For once, I wasn't planning my next sentence. I wasn't rehearsing how to explain myself better. I was just there, and that's when I noticed something I'd been avoiding. Underneath the frustration, there was fear, not panic, the quieter kind, the kind that comes from feeling misunderstood for too long. I wasn't listening to the argument anymore. I was listening to what it did to me. The tightening in my chest, the way my thoughts narrowed. That's when I started to notice something else. We weren't arguing about the issue. We were reacting to what the issue represented. Every time the conversation circled back, something in both of us went on alert, not to attack, to protect. It wasn't about being right or winning. It was about feeling safe enough to stay present when things got uncomfortable. I realized how quickly I went into fixing mode, explaining, clarifying, trying to smooth things over, not because it helped, but because it felt safer than staying still. That pause didn't fix anything, but it changed how I saw the fight. For the first time, the repeating argument made sense, not as a failure, but as something asking to be noticed. And once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. Once I could see the pattern, it became impossible to ignore how stuck we were. We weren't spiraling, we weren't falling apart, but we were circling the same ground over and over again. There was a moment, not during a fight, not during a heavy conversation, just a regular evening. The kind where the house is quiet, not because things are peaceful, but because no one knows how to start talking again. I remember thinking about how much effort it took just to keep things from tipping over, how every conversation felt like something we had to manage. Neither of us wanted to be right anymore. We just didn't want to keep doing this. The idea of mediation came up quietly, not as a solution, not as a last resort, more like a question. What if we had help having the conversation? My first reaction wasn't relief. It was a hesitation. The word felt heavy, formal, like something you turn to when things are already broken. But the more I sat with it, the clearer something became. We weren't considering mediation because things were too far gone. We were considering it because we didn't want them to get there. We didn't expect it to fix anything. We just wanted a place where the conversation wouldn't turn into a fight before it even started. A place where we didn't have to brace ourselves every time something difficult came up. Deciding to go didn't feel hopeful. It felt relieving. Not relief that everything would be okay, just relief that we didn't have to carry it alone anymore. So we went. Walking into the room, my first thought wasn't this will help. It was, please don't let this make things worse. The room wasn't what I expected. No raised desks, no formal setup, just chairs, a table, space. Something about that mattered. The mediator greeted us calmly. She didn't rush. She didn't push us to start talking right away. She explained how the conversation would work. One person would talk at a time. No interruptions, everyone would get their turn. Hearing that did something to me. I hadn't realized how much energy I usually spent preparing to be cut off or rushing my words before things escalated. Knowing I wouldn't be interrupted made it easier to breathe. She asked us to help make a list together, not solutions, just the things that kept coming up. The topics that always seemed to lead to the same argument. Seeing them written down made them feel less overwhelming, like they didn't all have to collide at once. When it was my turn to speak, my body reacted before my mind did. Tight chest, shallow breath. But no one jumped in. No one corrected me. The mediator stayed focused on listening. She let me finish, even when my words came out uneven. Halfway through, my voice wavered. Normally, that's where everything would fall apart. But she stayed steady. And that steadiness made it easier to keep going. When I finished, she reflected back what she heard. Not perfectly, not word for word, but close enough that my shoulders dropped without me realizing it. Yes, I thought, that's what I was trying to say. When the other person spoke, I felt the instinct to interrupt rise up, to explain, to defend. But the structure held. I knew I would get my turn again. That made it easier to listen without preparing my response. When emotions rose, the mediator slowed things down, not by stopping the conversation, but by helping us stay grounded. There were silences, real ones. I felt exposed in those pauses, but not unsafe. No one forced agreement. No one pushed us toward solutions we weren't ready for. We moved through the list slowly, one issue at a time. The same differences were still there, but they didn't pile up on top of each other. If you've ever left a conversation feeling drained instead of heard, this is probably why. When the session ended, nothing felt magically resolved. There were still things to figure out. But the fight didn't follow us out the door. It stayed in the room. I realized I wasn't bracing anymore. When we left the building, nothing around us looked different. Same street, same cars passing by, but something felt lighter, not gone, just not pressing down the same way. I realized something on the way home. The conflict didn't disappear that day. What changed was how much power it had. We stopped being afraid of it. Having a place where the conversation could slow down changed what it took out of us. It wasn't about fixing each other. It was about not being alone in the middle of something difficult. That changed how we talked afterward. Not perfectly, just differently. And sometimes that's enough to let things move forward. We weren't fighting loudly, and that mattered more than we realized. This is the first story in a series about the fights we get stuck in, and what helps them slow down. If this story felt familiar, you don't have to figure out the next step right now. Just know this: having the same fight over and over doesn't mean you're failing. Sometimes it means the conversation needs more space than you can create on your own. If this video helped you feel a little less alone, you can let me know by giving it a like. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, you're welcome to subscribe and come back when you need it. If you're curious about mediation or pre-mediation coaching, there's a link below where you can learn more, quietly, at your own pace. No pressure, just information. When you're ready.